Hey everyone! So we are getting into week 3 review. First off, before we get started though, I do want to address, yes, my hair is different. What? You're not crazy. I promise. I've just had a lot of really major hair changes in the last month. So getting into my week in review number 3. So I kind of want to start out and just basically say, yes, I failed. Now, I don't want that to be a negative though, because we'll get into why it's not. Essentially, did I draw any mermaids? No, I didn't. But, well, that, and I also didn't do any of my technical challenges that I set myself up for this week. So that was a little disappointing, and that's fair. And I'm allowing myself to feel disappointed in that. However, when I started the Maybe Draw Daily / Mermaid Challenge, I don't know if I was 100% clear about it in the initial video, but it was really just to get myself to do art. And I know I talked about the why I quit art video. That video, I talked about a lot of the animosity and just hatred that I would feel when I would sit down and do art. And the entire point of getting back into art and the Maybe Draw Daily was to basically just not have that sense of confrontation, not have that sense of anxiety, and just be able to create art and be okay with it. And as you can see, I actually worked on this piece over the last week. This is a piece I've been working on over the last 2 weeks, actually. And the history of this image in particular is about a year ago, I had this concept, I wanted to do it, but when I was really close to having it finished, I just wasn't pleased with the execution and I wanted to do it again. There was a look I was going for and I just couldn't 100% capture it, and I feel like I did a much better job this time around. Granted, I do know there's a lot that I can learn from this. However, I am so far taking this as a win, but we will have to see how I finish this piece. So I kind of had some thoughts about how I wanted to talk about essentially me failing this week, or this most previous week that we just got out of, because it really illuminated something for me in the way that we set goals, and something that I've been super guilty of in the past, and actually I'm still guilty of today. And that's essentially just how we set our goals in general. Now, I'm essentially going to paint a scene that I am super familiar with, and it's where I say, I'm going to do this thing, and then every time I take a step forward towards that goal, even though I may be taking a step forward towards it every day, when I take a look back and think on it, I just don't feel any closer to actually achieving the goal which I've been trying to reach out and get. Now, here is just going to be a very simple example. Say my goal is to draw an apple. Now, on the outside, it looks like that goal is super clear and concise as to what it is. The goal is draw an apple. However, the problem with a goal like that is that it lures you kind of into this false sense of security of being like, oh, I just need to draw an apple. But what do you mean when you say that? Do you want to draw a really well cartoon simplified apple? Do you want to draw a super photorealistic apple? Do you no longer want to use apple reference to draw from your head? Do you want to use an apple as an object for shading practices? Because while you like shading, you're a little tired of spheres, and apples add a little bit more variety into the shape and the texture of the surface of the apple and how it plays with the light and shadow? Or are we even talking about abstracting an apple? I'm going to stop there because obviously you can go on. There are so many examples as to what are you talking about when you mean draw the apple. And that's one thing that I realized that I had done in the past that had actually sabotaged me a lot, is that I would make a goal that would seem like a measurable, achievable goal, draw an apple. But then every time I would take a step towards it, I would draw an apple and then be like, okay, well, I think I can do better. And then draw another apple and then, okay, I think I can do better. Then draw another apple, and then I tried experimenting with different types of apples. Maybe I would draw apples in new mediums. Maybe I would be like, oh, I just learned this great technique. I can't wait to draw the apple using that technique. And then before you realize it, you've drawn a bunch of apples, but because that goal of draw an apple is so, open-ended, you almost feel guilty about being like, well, I technically did it, so, you just kind of keep trying to push towards it. So I guess one of the things that I want to say is, in general, we as people need to do better at saying, here is a goal, and even if it is just draw the apple, just say, okay, if my goal is to draw an apple, as soon as I draw an apple, I have technically completed that goal, and acknowledge that. I know artists in particular are really bad at this, and I say that having known one myself for as long as I've been an artist, but also having friends who do the same exact thing. We sit down, we look at what we're working on, and we just don't feel any real sense of accomplishment because, you know, another example is a comic book artist who's like, all right, I'm going to do a comic. And maybe that story is a sprawling 500-page epic, and they sit down and go, well, I've only done 50 pages. Like, I just don't feel, you know, that's only 1/10 of the story that I want to tell. But you've drawn 50 pages. You should take each page as a celebration to help propel you forward into completing the rest of the long haul. Now, I know for some people that probably sounds like buffering or padding some celebrations. And if you're not comfortable with that, I would recommend maybe look at, you know, every 5 or every chapter. Essentially, I don't feel like us as artists need to stifle celebrating small victories. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't recommend going out, having a cake, and basically having a release party for every page that you finish. But I think that it may help us when moving forward, or at least people who run into this issue of like, I want to just draw an apple, but then never feel like they've drawn an apple, even though they've drawn 200 apples. You know, I just want to try and figure out some sort of happy medium where it's both we acknowledge the hard work that we've done, and then we push harder. So, going back to the apple example, because apples, what I do think is an important thing to know is, say we do set something up where it's as simple as just draw the apple and we've done it. Now, if that's part of a larger goal, obviously then the next step is to challenge ourselves and actually have that goal be something where we do need to take a step forward in our art. And that is where I think, that's one reason why I think we could never really cross that goal of like when we set such an open-ended goal such as draw the apple, because it's not really marking or setting down set things or like set improvements where we can look back and say, yeah, you know, like I challenged myself with coloring on this apple and I did it. Like I don't necessarily feel like I executed it well, but I did it and I learned lessons, and that's going to improve my art going forward. So I am going to stop myself because I can go on at length about drawing the apple, but I do want to challenge you, fellow artist, fellow human, fellow whatever, if you find yourself making open-ended goals and or just being frustrated with the goals you make in general, look and see if maybe you can break that down into a more defined goal and how to take that goal a step further once you accomplish it. Because it's not about minimizing what you accomplish, it's about, you know, recognizing your accomplishments. So that said, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day. Please subscribe and go make something.